This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This episode brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can get a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video. This week, NFC West rivals meet again as the San Francisco 49ers visit the Los Angeles Rams. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with football's best party, TNF Tonight, presented by Verizon. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial. It's the 49ers and Rams, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And we are now in the first week of the Orioles offseason. The Orioles finished the regular season with a disappointing 75-87 record that started off really, really bad and then had a lot of highs and lows after that. And we will break a little bit of that down tonight before discussing what is one of the biggest topics, if not the biggest topic, in Birdland going into the offseason, which is who was going to be the Orioles' new manager. Now, as I just touched on a moment ago, the Orioles with a disappointing 2025 season, 75-87 record, good for last in the American League East. This is a team that many expected coming into the year could compete for a playoff spot, if not the American League East title. And if things broke their way, maybe finally get over the hump, win that first postseason series, and perhaps push on to the World Series. But that did not happen this year, and there are a lot of reasons why it didn't happen. The pitching staff was particularly bad in the first couple months of the year. In the second half, the offense took a little bit of a dip. Meanwhile, the Orioles were hit with a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball, and those struggles led to Brandon Hyde, who just 2 years ago was named American League Manager of the Year, being fired in May after a 15-28 start to the season. He was replaced by Tony Manzolino, who, as interim manager, went 60-59, which gave the Orioles a little bit more respectability at the end of the year, but still a disappointing finish. And we are going to get into Manzolino's prospects for perhaps being named permanent manager in a little bit. But, Bob, I will start with you. There's a lot that we could unpack tonight, and I think our plan is to kind of unpack some of that gradually over the next few weeks. But what are your takeaways from this season, and is it a relief to you now that it's over?
Yeah, it's absolutely a relief that it's over. I mean, we've talked about it to death, but that the first 2 months of the season were probably the least fun, or the most disappointing first 2 months of a season. And just 2025 is cursed is the word for me. I mean, I don't think anyone was fully healthy other than Jackson Holiday all season long on the position player side. And I think he made really good strides from his rookie year in 2024, where he vastly underperformed. And he came in as a 21-year-old this year, stayed healthy, played all season long at second base. Yeah, 690 OPS, but I felt like in the second half, he, especially the last 2 months, he really found the walk rate, the pitch selection that we knew him from his time in the minor leagues, especially AAA, before he made his debut. I feel like he flashed some power, tied the team lead with only 17 home runs, but still was the team lead, 21 doubles, 17 stolen bases, even though I feel like he attempted 50 to get to 17. But yeah, I think he made strides. But other than that, Adley Rutschman in the beginning of the year, I feel like he was getting really unlucky. Like the underlying data was much improved from 2024, but he was hitting into some bad luck. Then obviously he gets hurt off and on for the rest of the season, which limits him. Jordan Westberg gets hurt very early in the year, tries to play through it and just battles injuries all year long. Obviously, Colton Cowser missed the entire offseason recovering from a broken hand, and he had a broken thumb or whatever it was, diving headfirst early on in the season, missed time. Apparently he had broken ribs, and just no one was healthy. Even Gunnar missed all of spring training, and I feel like got off to a slow start, eventually rebounded to beat Gunnar Henderson. But yeah, it just was incredibly disappointing. But I do think that the way they ended the season, especially the last 2 months, I feel like you saw Kobe Mayo make some really good strides, make some adjustments, especially in September. He had an OPS in the 900s. Samuel Basayo, Dylan Beavers come up, make their debuts and performing pretty well for guys just getting their first taste of the big leagues. But obviously, hugely disappointing season. But I felt like between the trade deadline and being able to get some good returns and build the farm system back up and some strides that guys made down the stretch, I feel like there is reason for optimism, at least, especially on the offensive side for 2026.
Yeah, just like high level, it was just, point to what you want to point at. It wasn't one specific thing, right? It was all the injuries you just mentioned. And not to mention, like, we never saw Grayson Rodriguez. Talk about the pitching side of it. We never saw Grayson Rodriguez. Who knows if we're ever going to see like real Felix Bautista ever again. Like, that's all that drama with the pitching injury aside. Like, it's just, some of it you can help. It was at least a little comforting in Michael Elias's end of year press conference there, where he at least addressed, like, I don't know what needs to change with the hitting. I'm not going to sit here and break that down, but clearly something needs to change. And at least he addressed it. And I don't think that necessarily means that they're going to fire the hitting coaches. There's going to be a shakeup there. There could be. But clearly the organization knows something's not working. Maybe it was hey, things have been going pretty well for us in this department over the last couple of years. Look at the success we've had with the hitters we've drafted, and look at our homegrown lineup here. The hitting side's going well, and so they just kind of like kept it status quo. And then this year, you have to constantly adjust and learn and keep tweaking everything that you do. And maybe they didn't do it as much, and it all kind of came to a head this year. But at least he addressed it. Same thing on the medical side. Again, it's, you don't know. Some of it you can't help. Some of it was freak injuries. But clearly something is going on. And for Elias to sit there and at least say, hey, we're going to examine this again, and we're going to go and review all of this. And, if any personnel changes take into effect, then they do. But at least they've acknowledged that those were big weaknesses. And so, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully some real change is made there. So we'll see what that is. But yeah, you could point to any number of different things, and it's done. Like, there's really nothing new to add to the conversation that hasn't already been said. It's done. Move on from here. I think that's. I'm done thinking about the 2025 season. I've been checked out for a very long time. Still enjoyed this summer because we do this show, because we like watching prospects and talking about prospects, and so getting to dive into that even a little bit more. But it is kind of depressing now that playoffs are here, and to sit down and watch these games, and as exciting as they are to know that Baltimore should be there, that is kind of like another little gut check here at the end of the year. But I will say, I know earlier when we did an episode when it was very clear that there's no coming back from where the Orioles are heading. I do remember, I don't think I said it on the podcast, but I remember thinking it, and I was like, I'm going to hold off on this because it was like June or something. I was like, I don't want to be this drastic this early, even though I believe a couple people like reached out after the episode, were like, you guys good? You guys need some help? But my thought back then was, if this is going to go down, I hope it goes down hard, and I hope it's embarrassing, like, to be honest. And I hope it forces the front office and everyone involved to, I hope it hurts, and force them to internalize this and look at this and make some real changes. So, but luckily it was pretty embarrassing, and it was a disaster of the year, but we also saw some really solid wins on a granular level with individual player performances. So, yeah, we eyes to the future, luckily.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to list the injuries like as an excuse. I just meant it as these things went wrong. And obviously, yeah, I do think even when guys were healthy, the approach, something was off. And like you said, Elias said that and the reason I believe this is just because the track record since Elias and company took over, I do feel like they are willing to evolve, willing to just do whatever they think is best for the team. Yeah, I do think approaches might need to change. Maybe just, I don't think it's anything really major. I still like the raw talent that is on here, but yeah, if it wasn't for the injuries, it was the underperformance. And I didn't even mention Tyler O'Neill, barely healthy. Ryan Mountcastle sucked when he was healthy. No offense. And who else? Heston Kjerstad, just who knows what's going on there. So a lot of really bad breaks as well as underperformance. So really got to, like he said, look at things and adjust the process to hopefully get better results.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me was I started to dig into the numbers for this season was how bad the offense was in the second half of this year. If you go back to the first half, they scored 393 runs, which is not a world-beating pace, but it's a lot better than the 284 they scored in the second half. So if you looked at the trajectory of this roster, the pitching staff was horrendous the first 2 months of the year. Second half, and especially the further we got into the second half, things started to stabilize. Trevor Rogers comes along in mid-June, permanently in the majors at that point, and is dominant from there. Kyle Bradis comes back in late August. Tyler Wells comes back a week later, makes his debut in early September. Both of those guys looked great to close out the season. And the bullpen, it was a patchwork to get through the last couple of months, but in pitchers like Rico Garcia and Cade Stroud, I'm left with some guys I'm at least intrigued with. They need to do a lot of work, and that's something we'll talk about in a future episode to address the bullpen. But there's a few arms there that I'm intrigued by. But the offense, it needs a spark. And I know there's going to be a lot of conversation this offseason about, do you need a veteran hitter who can stabilize things? And the key for me going into next year has to be that the lows can't be as low as they were this year. The Orioles had 3 losing months in the 2025 season, and in none of those months did they get over a 400 winning percentage. Think about how bad that is. You're losing more than 60% of your games in your losing months. If that had been just a little bit better, the tone of our conversation is probably different right now. But the low points were really low. And 2 of those months were under high, but there was one under Manzolino in June when they went August, when they went 11-17. So their bad months were really bad.
And how many games, I truly don't know, how many games did we see a lineup with Gunnar and Adley and Westberg and Holiday, like all together? 2?
Not
3?
many at all. Yeah.
Like, yeah, just I don't know. I think the injuries to me were a big deal, and so again, I don't know how you address that or fix that or what needs to be fixed because we're not behind the scenes. But a couple of the injuries were freak injuries. The whole Colton Cowser thing, like, oh yeah, he had a broken rib for like a month or so. Like, come on. It seemed kind of destined from the very beginning because that was the first series where Jordan Westberg is hurting, and then a couple weeks later, didn't he kind of like say the quiet part out loud at one point? It was just like, yeah, I'm going to be hurt all year. I'm just going to have to deal. I'm just going to have to manage this. Kind of ominous signs there from the very beginning. But yeah, that was the part that hurts the most. The pitching, I'm not shocked at all with the pitching because it wasn't addressed in the offseason. Like, okay, you signed a 35-year-old rookie from Japan. Like, cool. That was fun for a little bit, but like, I don't need to see that again this offseason. I am disappointed by it. I'm not surprised by that, but the hitting is what hurts the most in my opinion, just because like that core, and that's why it's like, I wanted it to burn hard if we're going to do this, but at the same time, like, I want to see guys take that step forward, and some guys weren't able to do that because they weren't on the field. So
yeah, gotta really dig into that growth mindset this offseason if you really want to be a great major leaguer the way these guys have the talent to do so. I think this was a great motivation to really get the work done this offseason. As far as the injuries, I don't know if it's like strength and conditioning, if it's bad luck, because I feel like up until the second half of 2024, I feel like the health was on the positive side of luck, if you want to say. Just didn't have as many injuries as a lot of other teams. And then since mid 2024 to now, I feel like it's even gone over to the Ravens, to the other local team, all the injuries, really bad luck. So yeah, I don't know if that's something you can control or not, but just I do think a hard refresh is going to do this team pretty good, and hopefully they're coming to next season pissed off and willing to do anything to prevent it from happening again. But yeah, the pitching was great actually in the second half, especially obviously Trevor Rogers, fantastic. Bradish looked as good, if not better, when he came back from Tommy John. Tyler Wells looked like first half Tyler Wells, pretty solid, just goes up throwing strikes. Dean Kramer, after the first month of the season, was really good. I think his FIP, all the projected stuff as well as the actual stuff after the first month were in the threes. So he got better as the season went along. Sugano was fine. I mean, and Zach Eflin, forgot he even existed. He got hurt. He was not himself this season. So honestly, on paper, I feel like you don't need to do a ton to really get this team back on track other than just be healthy. And then the pitching is, as long as you have Rogers, Bradish, Wells, Kramer, maybe Grayson Rodriguez, he's throwing this month. You sign one or trade for one or two solid pitchers. I feel like AAA is going to be loaded with depth and high quality depth in the rotation and in the bullpen. So honestly, I'm actually more worried about the offense than the pitching moving forward, just because I feel like it's a guarantee that they're going to go out and get like at least a number 2 or 3 capable starting pitcher to go with what we have now.
You know, as a time capsule, before we move on to Manzolino, I just want to bring this up. As a time capsule, I went back today and I listened to an episode we did in late April, and it was a couple of days removed from that 24-run debacle against the Reds. And the night that Nick went on one of the best rants of the season about knowing, I think it was either 1,000 or 10,000 players, but up until that night, he had never heard of Mitchell Parker. Now, Mitchell Parker, a left-hander on the Nationals, one hit the Orioles over 8 innings in a start the night we recorded that episode. Do either of you want to guess what Mitchell Parker's ERA was to finish out the season?
Still don't know who he is.
Yeah. I'm going to guess 5 something.
You would be about right.
8.5.
Not 8.5, 5.68 over 164 and 2/3 innings. Because he was a National, he got 30 starts. So there you go.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to address this comment from Dental Office that we were all excited about Sugano. Yeah, we were when he was expected to be the 5th man in the rotation, and I think his numbers would have been perfectly adequate as the 5th starter in a rotation. 4.64 ERA, 8 innings, 157. He wasn't really the problem. He was actually a bright spot, especially early on in the season. But when he's counted on to be like number 2 or 3 starter in your rotation after the injuries and poor performance, then yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say something, but we can move on.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on now to Tony Manzolino. And Mike Elias indicated at the end of season press conference on Monday that the Orioles are going to move quickly in their search for a manager, and that Tony Manzolino is in the mix, but that it's not a guarantee he's going to get the job. The Orioles want the opportunity to explore their options. They're going to take advantage of that. Manzolino, as I said recently, I think he did an admirable job under the circumstances, but I'm not 100% sold that he should be the permanent manager. And I say that as someone who doesn't have the benefit of seeing the inner workings of the team on a day in and day out basis. So I could be way off base about that, or that could be the consensus of a lot of people in the Orioles organization. Now, this is going to be a very, very active managerial market this offseason. When you look at the number of jobs that are open around the game, San Francisco has opened up, Texas, Atlanta, Minnesota, that's in addition to Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Colorado. So there's going to be a lot of moving parts this offseason to finding a manager, which is why I think the Orioles want to get moving on this quickly. And what we can kind of get into tonight is, do we think Manzolino should be that guy? And if not, what are we looking for in a new manager? And Nick, I want to start with you because you said something off air last week that I think is going to be a good jump starter in this conversation.
What did I say?
Oh, you don't want Manzolino as manager. That was
No, just like I don't know. Some of the quotes he came out with was just like, do we need to say that? I don't know if we fully we're getting it right there. I don't know. It's just weird vibes there. I'm fine with like him not coming back. I do agree. I think, this team did play well for good stretches under him. They were able to turn some things around after Hyde left, but I just kind of, I don't know. I feel like at this point, when a lot behind the scenes needs to change, and I almost wonder, like, can this team afford a first year manager, right, in 2026, or do you need to bring in somebody with experience? Who that would be, I have no idea. I have no options. I'm not looking into it. I don't know the fits, because again, we talk all the time about like, well, how much impact does a manager truly have, right? We did this with Hyde when people were like, well, what do we think about Hyde? And having discussions about that, and it's just like, we're not in the clubhouse. We don't truly know. We don't truly know how this organization operates. Obviously, with Michael Eisner was promoted for a full year before anybody knew. Like, nothing comes out of this organization, so we don't know how things roll exactly. Of course, we had Eve on, and people still reference that Eve Rosenbaum interview. That was years ago. Things have changed. So with that, like it's hard to know like who would be a good fit. Now, if time comes and it's announced that Manzolino is coming back and the players are gung ho and the players are going to the front office themselves and saying, we want him back, we want to play for him, he has our full endorsement, fine. Like, I'll trust the players there, but I don't get that vibe at all. I don't really get that vibe from Elias in that end-of-season press conference that Manzolino is going to be the guy. But yeah, I think I'd like to see more of a veteran guy who's been there, done there before, who's had a lot of success and can be there. If this is a young roster still, and if it's a guy like Westberg or Kauser or next year with Beavers or Basai or somebody, and they're going through the struggles, like, it'd be nice to have that manager who's seen superstars now in Major League Baseball come up and go through those same exact struggles, and they can speak from experience. Buck Britton, I'm sure, could do a lot from the experience he's had with these guys, but he's never done it in a managerial role in the Major League level. So, a lot of people were very excited about Buck becoming eventually the guy that takes over from Brandon Hyde. But now, after the way this season has gone, I'm not so sure that I'd like to see the first year manager.
I would be shocked and frankly appalled if Tony Manzolino is the manager coming back for 2026. And I do think the comments at the presser from Elias about him being a real candidate for the job and having him do the whole interview where he said, I'd be happy to, or I'd consider coming back in any capacity. To me, it just read as, we're going to this is us patting you on the back for stepping up and doing a solid job in a terrible situation. And I'm not saying that Manzolino couldn't eventually be a capable manager, but especially bullpen management, little things. And yeah, there's a ton that we just have no clue about. But as far as what I could tell, the bullpen management, just really relying on veterans Keegan Aiken and Yunier Cano time in and time out and high leverage when they failed time and time again. It wasn't for me, but I do think they need someone that has at least had some postseason success, and not because I think that's important in a manager, but I think you need a guy that the players can look at, like when they're struggling, when they get to the playoffs again, hopefully next year, someone they can look at and be like, all right, he's been here, he's done that. I think more so for the players to give them the confidence in the whatever, I don't know, X factor-ness, if Bruce Bochy is the guy, or if it's, I wouldn't even mind if it was someone younger. It doesn't need to be a big name. It doesn't need to be someone who's been around forever, but I think it needs to be less of a passive voice in the clubhouse, where I feel like Brandon Hyde, he wasn't a guy that was a rah-rah. I don't know. I think we have a bunch of good dudes in the clubhouse. I'd like to see a little more fire. But we don't know. Again, I that could already be there and just don't see it because we're watching on TV. There's really no way to know.
Yeah, it is hard to know. And I will say that from an experience standpoint, the way that I feel about it is that I don't know there's a tried and true formula that works. Because you look at Bruce Bochy, he went into Texas, he wins a World Series in the first year, but the Rangers had also spent a lot of money on their payroll in the year or so leading up to that and didn't get any results under Chris Woodward. So they bring in Bochy, they win the World Series, and that's followed by 2 kind of pedestrian years. Although I don't think there were a lot of factors behind that weren't Bochy's fault. I don't know that there's a manager in the American League that has done a better job over the last 2 years than Stephen Vogt in Cleveland. And that was someone who had no managerial experience. But that's also the American League Central with a well-oiled machine of an organization that knows how to develop pitching and somehow can get by year after year with 2 or 3 good hitters at the most in their lineup. I'm not saying that what Vogt is doing is a fluke. Not at all. I think he's a very good manager. I just don't know that's going to work in the American League East. So there's got to be a little bit of a balance. And I'll tell you what I almost, and I know this isn't going to happen, but what if with the ownership change and a little bit of a change in the direction, somehow Kevin Cass becomes available? That's the first phone call I'm making. It's not going to happen. But if I had to give my dream scenario, that would be it.
Yeah, that would be interesting, especially, Tampa Bay has new ownership about to take over. I think they've lost a couple guys from the front office already this offseason. So maybe they want to refresh. Maybe the new ownership wants to bring in their own people and start over. But yeah, Kevin Cash, he's a really good manager. He's had a lot of experience as well. I would certainly love that. Skip Schumacher was the guy I was hoping for, especially after we brought in John Mabry. But with Bochy leaving, I'm pretty sure he's going to be handed that job. David Ross is a name I think that has popped up again. I don't know how I feel about that. Honestly, I kind of just – the problem is I trust this front office. So I feel like whoever they pick, they're going to have the conversations they need to have, and they're going to feel like he's the guy that's right for the job. And they're probably right. But they're going to know a lot more about these guys. The players' side, we can do a little more analyzing because we see the numbers, we see the analytics. With the managers, it's all soft factors that we really have no clue how important it is. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, give me a guy who's been there, done that. But other than that, I mean, I if it wasn't for this season, I'd want Buck Britton to take over. But I just don't think you can put him in that position. And I think almost like Skip Schumacher in Texas, he should be the bench coach next season. In a perfect world, be the heir apparent in a few years.
Yeah, and the only thing with my only thing with Cash is like, can you wait with so many openings and there's some good jobs? I'd like to see this wrapped up like immediately, like within the next week. And I think it does happen within the next week or two for sure, especially with there's a lot of attractive jobs becoming open. Atlanta, this looks like a great opportunity for somebody. Like if I'm the Orioles and I got guys on my short list, I'm getting pretty aggressive here because free agency is going to start soon. We don't know again what impact that the manager is going to have in that, but I'd like the pieces in place because again, it's 2025 happened. It's done. It's time to, and I said this from the draft, right? You nailed the draft. That was step one in this whole thing. They nailed the draft. All right, next point in the season's here. You need a manager. You go back to the GM conversation. It doesn't sound like they're in any rush to name a general manager at the moment, but the manager is a completely different story. And that I would like to just get wrapped up immediately. And then let's start the offseason at that point. But
yeah, completely agree on that. And I know that we're going to hear a lot more about the candidates in the mix. And one of the other job that I forgot to mention, I was rattling off some of the ones that were open a moment ago, was the Angels, but that's kind of a terrible job. So I don't think you really have to compete with them. So you're looking really at the Braves, I think, as the top landing spot if Texas isn't really all that open, probably followed by the Orioles. And the Pirates, you get to manage Paul Skeens for a couple of years, but otherwise, I do think that the Orioles are in a good spot, but I agree with you guys that they got to move quickly.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility, he knows keeping the line up and running is a top priority. That's why he chooses Grainger. Because when a drive belt gets damaged, Grainger makes it easy to find the exact specs for the replacement product he needs. And next day delivery helps ensure he'll have everything in place and running like clockwork. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And with that, now we'll head into our final segment of the night. We're going to give out our last organizational awards for this year, which are the pitcher and hitter of the year for the Orioles. And I'm just going to jump right in because there's no suspense at all about who wins this at the major league level. It's Trevor Rogers for pitcher of the year and Gunnar Henderson for hitter of the year. Rogers settled in the major leagues permanently in mid-June after making a spot start for the Orioles in May. And coming off an injury, was flat out dominant over 109 2/3 innings pitched, struck out 103 batters while walking 29 and posting a 1.81 ERA. We talked recently about the possibility maybe the Orioles look at an extension for Rogers. And to be clear, this stretch was a career high stretch for him, at least his best run in the major league since 2021. And it's unlikely to be repeated at this level, but given how he turned himself around, there's reason to believe that if you can get 150, 160 innings or more out of Trevor Rogers over the next 2 or 3 years, you're getting a pretty good pitcher. So, Nick, I'll go back to you here. Your thoughts on Rogers' season?
Yeah, I feel like this was the play with that trade when it happened. Like, it wasn't the type of arm you wanted to see the Orioles acquire at that time. And unfortunately, this huge resurgence happens in a disaster of a season, but hopefully this is kind of a sign of the real Trevor Rogers. Like you said, over the next couple of years, yeah, there's going to be some regression. He's not going to pitch that well, but even if he can be just a high quality, like 3 or 4 in this rotation going into next year, like huge win. You go back, so June 18th, looked like he full-time stint in the rotation starts June 18th. From then on, he was 4th in the major leagues in starters in F4 behind Christopher Sanchez, who's at 4.7, Paul Skeens at 3.4, Yamamoto at 3.2, and then Trevor Rogers at 3.1. Only qualified starter with an ERA under 2 at 1.92, 4th lowest average against. This guy's sitting atop the leaderboard for everybody. So yeah, a very bright spot in what was a very dark season for sure. And I love that it was Trevor Rogers though too, just because that trade, just the conversation about that trade, even into the beginning of this season, which sure, I get it, deserved, but man, it was good to see that conversation from a national perspective start to flip a little bit there.
Yeah, especially with the start to the season that Kyle Stowers had. And Stowers finishes with a 4-WAR season. That's pretty good, and I'm very happy for him. But it just was nice to have Trevor Rogers come in and establish himself. And honestly, I feel like obviously he's not going to have an ERA under 2 next year. I would find that very hard to believe. He did have a lower BABIP, 226, and a lucky home run to fly ball ratio in 5.5%. But even if you double his ERA, that's 3.62. I think we'd still be happy with that. But it wasn't much of a fluke. I mean, he was out there pitching his butt off, and his expected ERA was 3.35, FIP 2.82, xFIP 3.64. So even if you look at his expected stuff, it's pretty good. It's pretty darn good. Like you said, if he's your 3rd or 4th starter, I think you're ecstatic, to be quite honest with you. If you can, sign trade for an ace level, I think Kyle Bradish is an ace level pitcher. If things break right for once, Grayson Rodriguez comes back, top 4 is going to be pretty strong next year. And Trevor Rogers, yeah, talk about a huge bright spot in an otherwise very dreary season. That would be Trevor Rogers.
Our hitter of the year, Gunnar Henderson, began the year on the IL, ended up appearing 154 games, and there were some peaks and valleys with Henderson's performance along the way. Final line, though, pretty respectable, even with a drop in power from what we saw a year ago. 274 batting average to go to 120 WRC plus and 651 plate appearances across those 154 games. While the walk rate dropped a little bit, the strikeout rate came down with it. What has been a topic of conversation, though, is kind of the disappearance of power from Gunnar. After hitting 37 home runs last year, that total is down to 17 this year. And while the limited, less playing time was a factor, it was just a difference of 5 games. So there was more in play with that. I have my own theory, but I still think that when you look at Gunnar Henderson's season, if the Orioles had had 4 more hitters like that, we would be having a much different episode today. So given that he had not much of a supporting cast throughout the year, didn't have a full spring training, this was all in all not a bad year, certainly below the expectations we had for him coming into this season, but there's nothing that I look at and say, oh, Gunnar Henderson has regressed and isn't going to bounce back next year. Gunnar is the last hitter that I'm worried about on this team.
Exactly. He is the least of my worries when it comes to 2026. This was his age 24 season, and it's pretty comparable to his Rookie of the Year campaign 2 years ago. A little bit less power, but 4.7 WAR in 2023, 4.8 WAR this season, 122 WRC plus in 2023, 120 this year, 9% walk rate, 9.5 this year. The thing that he has done is he still hits the ball incredibly hard. I think the power will be back. I think his swing just was never completely right all season as far as it comes to getting loft on the ball. And that's probably comes from missing spring training. And I just don't think he was quite right physically the first few months of the season, even after he came back, because his defensive metrics were pretty bad early on. And by midseason, they were average. And by the end of the season, he was performing really well on defense. He has cut his strikeout rate from 25.8 in small sample in 2022, 25.6 in 2023, 22.1 last year, and 21% even this season. And it was even under 20% over the last 2 or 3 months of the season. I think he's only getting better. I think this was going to be kind of like a down year when you look at the ebbs and flows of his career. I expect him to fully be back in 7-8 WAR territory next year, but still a really solid season. And yeah, I love having Gunnar Henderson on this team.
And 34 doubles, career high 30 stolen bases. Like that's, you mentioned the strikeout rate. That was a career low. And yeah, it's just, he set a new career high in max EV. Technically, I lost. It was like 13.9 this year. It was 13.1. So almost a full mile per hour harder. It's just, you look at like the barrel rate tanked. You mentioned the loft there. So yeah, he wasn't driving the ball in the air as much, but he was still hitting the ball extremely hard. So yeah, I think it's one of those things where, yeah, you overhaul the hitting strategy and the approach, you figure that out. And I think Gunnar Henderson's he's gonna take right back off. If there's one guy we could sit here and have questions about everyone else in this lineup. There's some big questions for sure. But with Gunnar, Gunnar's going to be pretty good next year. I feel pretty solid about that.
And even if he ends up with 37 home runs in 2024 being a career high, I would not be shocked. I think he's more of a 25 to 30 home run guy on a year-to-year basis. But the steals were really impressive. He's a great athlete, great base runner. He only got caught stealing 5 times. It's 30 steals and 35 attempts. That's really good. Bold prediction, early 30-30 season for Gunnar Henderson in 2026.
Yeah, you guys touched on all the points I was going to make about Gunnar, mainly the barrel percentage being down, and the maybe not barreling the ball as consistently. The only other thing I would add to that is he saw more breaking balls this year than he did last year by a few percentage points higher, and I have to think that was a factor. And pitchers probably could afford to take more chances with Gunnar this year in terms of whether or not he's going to lay off breaking ball because there's nothing behind him. For the first half of 2024, Gunnar was hitting right in front of Adley. And with Adley going the way he was, you knew that if you walked Gunnar and you had to make a pitch to Adley Rutzman. Rutzman was going to square up on it. He was going to hit a double. And at best, you might hold Gunnar at third, but chances were he was going to score. This year, you probably didn't have to throw as many fastballs to him because you could afford to put him on because whoever's up behind him is not going to drive him in. And I think that that's a factor. So if the supporting cast around him is better and he's able to have a full spring training, get his swing in the right place at the onset of the season and stay consistent with it, he'll be right back where he picked off in 2024.
I also get the vibes. We're talking about most valuable Oriole, and technically just hitter of the year. But thinking back to like most valuable Oriole, and as far as the hitters are concerned, I also just get the vibe that it's honestly, statistically, yeah, it's Gunnar this year. Statistically, it could be Gunnar most years if you look over the next couple of years. But I feel like it's, as far as value, got to keep Jordan Westburg healthy. I feel like that is the true spark plug of this team. It just, the lineup feels different when he's in there and he's healthy, and he showed that there at the end of the year. It's why, yeah, I have zero expectation. We're gonna translate this, bring it back a little bit there, but I have zero expectation going into the offseason and even going into the next season. I can't do it again. I'm keeping my expectations low. Prove it to me, show me first, and then I'll get excited. But yeah, you're talking about Gunnar and his season that he had, and hopefully a Cowser with a healthy season. Believe the front office when they say Adley's the guy or not. I'm going to remain optimistic for another year with Adley, and to see some of these young guys come up and perform the way they did, Dylan Beaver specifically. You keep Jordan Westburg healthy on top of it, and I think this lineup just kicks on all cylinders. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I think he's like the glue guy. He's the guy that's just the gritty, hard nosed. When he's in there, he's a player. Gunnar's your uber talented. I guess him and Basai are like those freak athletes that can just do special things on a whim. Adley kind of, I don't know. I kind of agree. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he does get a little 4 or 5 year extension this offseason just to keep him around through his prime. I think there's definitely more there. He didn't just forget how to hit a baseball. And I think he's a good presence in the clubhouse. Maybe you do need to get a veteran. Maybe, I don't know, Pete Alonso. I don't know if I want that on the Orioles, but the bat would be great. I'll trust the front office to figure it out, but the pieces are here.
And with that does it for us this week. We're going to be back next week as we start to preview the offseason here in Birdland. I should mention, though, that if you're a member of our Patreon community, you will get another episode this week when we unveil our top 50 update for the month of October. This is actually going to be our last one until we get into our countdown for the preseason top 50, which actually is only going to begin in like another 6 or 7 weeks. And we'll have plenty of coverage for patrons between now and then. Bob also has a giveaway lined up for members of our Patreon community. If you want to tease that out real quick, Bob.
Yeah, I have 10 first Bowman Chromes of Elvin Garcia, who I think this is a good buy low opportunity. He had a disappointing year, but I think there's a good chance he's a breakout player next year. Maybe I'll give 5 of those away to current patrons, and I'll give 5 away to the next 5 new patrons that sign up for the show. So yeah, if you're interested in that, could be a nice little bonus.
Be sure to get on that and a lot more over at patreon.com. And between now and next week's episode, you can follow updates on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We are also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. Nick has a write-up this week up on Brandon Downer, a recent addition to the Orioles slate of prospects heading to the Arizona Fall League. So be sure to check that out and a whole lot more over at our Substack. For Bob Phil and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.
This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. All so that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.